So we'd like to welcome you to This Story, TGIF and Born and Shine Christian Toastmasters, a podcast about the history of two amazing Toastmasters clubs in Taiwan. And this is our very, very first episode.
It is the first official episode.
Indeed. And thank you very much, Joe, for getting this off the ground, for pushing so hard. And we're very happy to have
Lester Lin.
Yes, thank you for having me here.
Wonderful to have you. This is the man, the myth, the legend.
Indeed.
And you go by many different titles in our club. I sometimes refer to you as like the George Washington of our club. It's just the American in me. We also call him like
Dr. Air.
Dr. Air,
Yeah.
the founding father.
And for Born to Shine, the founding grandfather.
The founding grandfather. Right. That's right.
Grandma.
And Lester Lin, of course, you're a small business owner. You've done a lot of different things. You've had a wild ride of a life experience, from building communities out of nothing in the woods of Canada, just all sorts of stuff. It's amazing. And so we're really glad to have you. I think you can't have an episode 1 of this kind of podcast and not have you here. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Lester, we'd just like to kick off a little bit, just explain to us a little bit about your background, both just personal background and also your background in Toastmasters in general.
Okay, so basically, I'll start with the background in Toastmasters. Okay?
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
And it started off in a club called Prestige. It was one of the oldest clubs in Taiwan. It was quite a thriving club. And when I joined, it was at the bequest of the CEO of a company that we were cooperating with in the United States. And he said, go to Toastmasters. It'll help you in every way regarding business and in your personal life. So I started Prestige.
Nice. Oh, wait, you started Prestige?
No, I started at Prestige.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a dinner time meeting.
Yeah.
And you know what the fees were for the dinner?
I heard it was around 700 or something.
$650.
Yeah.
And it was at the hotel, right, on Dunhua and Nanjing.
The Asia World Hotel.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. But I went into there, not really knowing anything about Toastmasters, and I was going with the flow. It was a big club, so they didn't put a lot of push on the members to achieve certain milestones because there were so many people.
Oh, right, yeah.
So when you say milestones, what do you actually mean
These
by
are
milestones?
the educational milestones in Toastmasters. And
So, for example, in the old system, like the competent communicator, the competent leadership, the DTM.
the CC company.
Oh, that's a whole deep dive right there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But basically the old educational system, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So basically, as we had the meetings, I started getting more and more involved. And then along the way, there was another Toastmasters club that was starting called Taipei Metro.
Okay.
This is the Far Eastern group Toastmasters.
Oh, the fancy group, yeah.
And I was asked to go there as one of the club mentors. So I started attending both Prestige and Taipei Metro. And as time went along, I think in the third year, I was asked to be the president of Taipei Metro. And it was running quite well, and I accepted to be the president that year.
So you were the third president there?
I was the third president.
You've been all sorts of presidents.
Yes. And
Indeed.
there's one key member, the founder of Taipei Metro, was Neil Stovacek. And
Neil.
yeah, he had this mantra to have a president's theme for the year,
Yeah.
Okay.
right? And basically, when the previous president was learning by doing, and for me, it was team. Together, everyone achieves more.
Together, everyone achieves more. Okay.
Team.
Yes.
Team. We're all a team
Right.
here. Except for those of you who can see the video, because this is also an audio format, I do feel somewhat betrayed because I didn't realize there was a uniform today. Mr. Paul and Lester in white shirts.
Well, it was smart casual, right?
It was smart casual. I at least have the black pants, and I do have a button-down shirt. But I do feel somewhat ostracized by not having a white shirt.
It matches my
Was not, it was not coordinated with Lester and I.
I just love Lester shows up like, I see I wore the wrong shirt. Anyway, go ahead.
Team.
Okay,
Team. We're all here.
Yeah.
So basically, my goal as a president at that time came from L.J. Lamb, an icon in Toastmasters.
Wow, that's going back a few years.
And he said, when you have a club, you gotta shoot for President's Distinguished Club.
That's a really good impression. I've met the man once, and that's about spot on.
And I had no idea what that meant, but now I'm president. Okay, I'm going to do what LJ says. We're going to shoot for President's Distinguished Club. And so we started gearing towards that. And in order to do that, you have to have a well-coordinated club. Everybody, every member that's going to make an achievement needs to know what they're doing.
Right, yeah.
And the timeliness of when they achieve it.
Okay.
So the club worked very hard through that whole year, and in the third year we achieved the President's Distinguished Club, which is the highest KPI that Toastmasters had.
Right, yeah, you don't get that accidentally.
Right.
So just for the people who are not really aware, DCP stands for Distinguished Club Program?
Distinguished DPC, Distinguished President's Club.
Distinguished.
Yeah, but the actual program is DCP program,
DCP.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's just like the KPI for how Toastmasters International measures the quality of a club.
Right.
The basic KPI, yeah.
They're like educational goals,
Yeah,
membership goals.
Yeah, administration goals.
Administration goals, yeah.
Anyway, please.
Right. So we achieved President's Distinguished Club that year, and it was extremely satisfying because everybody knew what they were doing. They were working towards that goal, and we did achieve it as a club. Okay. Meanwhile, Prestige Toastmasters was almost dying.
What?
It was down to 7 members.
Wow.
This huge, thriving club was dying.
Oh, no.
I would attribute that probably to 2 generations of president who were not totally engaged.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And with the lack of leadership, I think we just started wasting away. Members weren't renewing. So there was one of our members who was Elizabeth Lim, and she dug in, and we really worked at trying to recruit more members and keep the club from dying.
Is that when you became the president?
No, that was when I was still Taipei Metro.
Okay.
But we ended the year with 14 members, still barely alive.
You're just hanging on there.
So the manager for Area A, the Area A governor.
Oh, they were called governors.
They were governors, but now it's directors.
Now it's directors. Governor sounds fancy. I like that.
So fancy. So they asked me, hey, I know you just finished Taipei Metro presidency. Would you consider going back to, taking the presidency at Prestige? That was a little nerve-wracking for me because I was afraid, what if the club dies under my leadership?
Oh, no, that pressure.
Right. And so I agreed to go back in. And as LJ Lamb said, I told the club, we are going to get President's Distinguished Club this year.
Wow.
Now, with the state of the club at that time, it was almost impossible to imagine that we could achieve that.
Yeah, that's a serious uphill battle.
Yeah. And we had to have everything to a T, every meeting, what someone was doing and all this. And so we worked really hard at that. And I remember it was the last meeting of the year, and we had one more member, Jerry Chen, who was going to give his
I remember you telling me the story.
Speech,
Yes, I remember you telling me the story.
Speech. And he called me late in the afternoon. He said, Lester, you don't believe this, but I have a client from out of town, and my boss says I must take him out to dinner tonight. I can't make the meeting.
Oh, no.
And the blood just drained out of my head. It was like just the most bitter defeat you could imagine.
There.
We were right on the cusp of that. It was our last meeting of the year.
Wow.
And we only had one more day left in the whole year.
There's no time, right?
There's no time. But yes, there's time. There's one day left.
Nice.
This is like the Lester Lynn never give up spirit. Like
That's
never
right.
quit.
Right.
So I called up the educational vice president. It was Brenda, who at the time, and then there was Shelley, who was the secretary. And I called Jerry. Jerry, can you make it this tonight? He said yes, and myself. And we had a meeting in my living room in my house.
It counts.
And
it does.
Shelley was the Toastmaster of the evening. I did the evaluation. Jerry gave the speech. And Brenda, the EVP, as soon as he finished it, she was online loading our credentials that we had achieved DCP.
Wow.
Right at the final hour.
And the sweetness of that was just undescribable.
Yeah.
That, we had worked so hard, and it just thought it had vaporized, and it finally raised from the dead and achieved the DCP.
And interestingly enough, like Prestige is still a club that's going on today. I mean,
That's right.
Which year was that in?
2000. I'm trying to think. 2009.
2009.
No, 2011.
2011,
Okay.
and like 12 years later, Prestige is still a
Still
club
there.
that's thriving,
Still
and they
going.
still are going strong. Yeah.
That's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess now, just to sort of flash forward a bit, we've gotten, Lester, our dear founding grandfather, before founding the clubs. It's like your single years.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you settle down.
Right.
Because you've been with TGIF now. You're charter president.
Yes.
You've been here the whole time. We have very few like charter members left
Well,
in the club now.
Lester is the last charter member left in the club.
Wow. And so
Really?
Yes.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was just you and Queenie.
yeah.
Sadly, Queenie's no longer with us.
Right. So
But yeah, you're the last. Well, I was at the charter dinner.
you were
but
at
I'm
the
not
charter
a charter
dinner.
member.
You're like a half charter member. A char member?
A charter.
We give you an honorary charter member.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. So we're kind of flashing forward a little
Yeah.
bit, to you settle down, you're going to start your own club. You're a pioneer, Lester.
Exactly.
And so like what was your motivation for starting TJF? You have Prestige, you've got Metro, you've got these nice clubs.
Yeah.
What made you decide you want to settle
and
down and have a family?
specifically a Christian club.
Yeah, that's
specifically
another
a Christian
thing.
club. Yeah.
So from an experience at church, at that time, I think there was quite a movement to not only have church on Sundays, but that you have small groups. And this is
Right.
where you're in a more intimate setting, you share more of your life, you get to be closer to a smaller group within the large group.
Right, yeah.
And I always looked at that model, and having experienced Toastmasters, in the back of my mind, I thought, the structure of Toastmasters would be a really great way to hold a small group.
Oh, that's a
little
good
more
point, yeah.
structure, okay? But this way, everybody gets involved. They tell their stories. It's not just one person speaking all the time. And so I kept on thinking it would be great to start a Christian Toastmasters Club.
Ah,
And the only problem is it was stuck in the thought realm.
Oh, yeah.
I think this would be great, but no action.
I mean,
So how long was it stuck in that thought wrong?
Oh, good question.
Well, I was in Toastmasters for 10 years.
Right.
All right. And it was probably 6 years of thinking this would be a great idea.
Wow.
And it came to a point when, in my educational process, I had one last project to do to get my Distinguished Toastmasters Award. And this is a major milestone
The
in the
tip of the
Toastmaster
top, yeah.
educational journey and leadership, right? Mm-hmm. So I decided, okay, God, it's time. I'm going to launch the Christian Toastmasters Club.
Not just a thought.
And we had this mentoring group. It was Carolyn Jung and her husband, Webster.
Right.
And in sharing it with them, Carolyn said, starting a club is a long, drawn-out process, and it's really hard.
Yeah,
I
know.
could arrange something at the next conference where you could do a certain project, and you'll be done in a weekend. You have to prepare for it and all this, but
Oh, you're talking about the leadership project, aren't you?
the high performance, the
Leadership,
HPL,
yeah.
high performance leadership.
Oh, that
project.
is a difficult journey.
And
Yeah,
that-
but you can choose your project, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You could choose, you could choose just something as organizing a big dinner or setting up a club, as long
Right.
as you
Right.
show some leadership.
Right.
And so, what Caroline's offering you is like some kind of leadership role.
a much faster way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. A much faster path. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was very tempted. I said, no, I'm committed to doing this.
Wow.
And so there started the process. And the first thing is, looking for some people to be in a starting team.
Mm-hmm.
And my good friend Douglas Huang, who was actually in Toastmasters way before me, and then he had spent quite a few years abroad working for Nokia. And he had just come back, and when I shared with him this thing of the Christian Toastmasters, he says, I'm all in.
Oh, nice.
I tell you,
It's good to have that guy all in, because when
That's
he's all
right.
in, he's
I mean,
all in.
He is
right?
super all
Doug
in.
is one of those capable guys I know,
Yeah,
and
no,
he
he's
works
very
at the
organized.
speed
yeah,
of
yeah.
light.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very capable, very organized. Yeah.
And so on came the journey. And also there was Michelle Chang, who was recruited as our secretary.
Sure.
Also super organized.
Also, that's right. So I think
Wasn't she a VP?
she was the secretary at first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought she was charter VP.
I thought Doug was the VP.
I think Doug.
Oh, Doug was
right.
VP.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
Yeah.
So off we were to the start. And the journey, I think it was such an amazing journey there. I call it God's human resource department.
Okay.
That through this whole thing, I had an unusual calm inside that God would bring along the people that we needed to get started. And time after time, person after person, the amazing people that he brought, including the two of you.
Our honorary
That's right.
charter member and a later member, yeah.
And every time we had these needs, and Christians and non-Christians,
Right.
I feel like the charter of and vision of our Christian Toastmasters Club is not only Christians, that we were
Sure.
here to be a living testimony of the love of God.
Sure.
And with God's kingdom principles, we, he says, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Right.
And so the goal was to bring a piece of heaven to our journey in Toastmasters. And therefore, we needed Christians in the club, but we also wanted to be open to people that were not Christians in their journey and to experience a taste of Christianity in our club. So I think just the wonderful mix, age-wise, from young to old. We even had people that were still in college that joined the club.
And even now, we have somebody who's in high school who cannot be a member.
That's
but
right.
is just attending on a
Yeah.
regular basis.
Yeah,
right?
I actually, to take a moment, what I love in hearing this
Yeah.
is how TGIF today looks very similar to TGIF back then.
In terms of
Right.
the demographic,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The demographics about
That's
the same, yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So what's always amazed me and just I love so much is that the total lack of generation gap. How much the mutual respect and love
Sure.
between the young and the old,
Yeah.
and the camaraderie. And basically, we say that TGIF was built on God's love.
Yeah, we do.
And that has been, so core and key to what we do. And also that the mantra that every person that comes through our door is a VIP that God
Absolutely,
sent.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing because
Yeah.
we've done that pretty much for the 10 years we've been running.
That's right.
And even the year before you chartered,
Exactly.
it's
yeah.
just been that has led to the growth.
Right.
Yeah, I think what's kind of funny is in talking about some of these initial ideas and phrases, these are still a part of our community language today.
Sure.
Yes.
Built on love is still very much
Exactly,
things that
yeah.
we say. The VIP that God himself brought to our doors.
Yeah.
We still say this almost every week. And there's something really nice about
Yes.
seeing a group that can hold on to an initial vision
Sure.
Yeah.
and keep pushing that and keep
Yeah.
holding it.
And it shapes our mindset and the way that
does.
we interact
Yeah.
with
Sure it
every,
does.
every new person that comes
Absolutely.
in. And I think in this, we're not always trying to be to just the glamorous people and the well-spoken and
Exactly.
the successful.
Exactly.
That every person that God sends in is someone that he deems that, hey, they need
Sure.
something that TGIF and Born have to
But
offer.
but just also just talking a little bit about the foundation of the club and also just a little bit about a little bit beyond the foundation of the club. Like, what were some of the biggest challenges in setting up not just a Toastmasters Club, because I think most people would understand that, but also the idea of a Christian Toastmasters Club? Because I remember when you first posted that, there were some people on Facebook making comments.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
a great question.
Yeah.
Because there's a misunderstanding by a lot of people that in Toastmasters, you don't talk about three things. You don't talk about religion, sex, or politics. That's not true. And basically, even from headquarters itself, they said we're about communication. We need to
Sure.
Right.
be able to talk about difficult subjects.
Right,
And to
certainly.
come to and to still have decent relationships. Different clubs can designate certain subjects that are off limits for
Okay.
the nature of that club.
Sure.
But in general, that's not a Toastmasters International rule. But when we posted it that we were starting a Christian club, there were some very negative reactions from different people.
Yeah.
Really?
They said, "Hey, this is not right. We don't talk politics. We don't talk religion, and this is not good."
Sure.
But I tried to reach out to different ones and communicated what our goal was and why we were doing this, and also that, in the United States there are church clubs. There are
Sure.
actually Republican Party clubs. There's
Wow.
Democrat Party
Yeah.
clubs.
I definitely remember when I visited the States, or I went back to the States, When I went back to the States and I went to a Toastmasters club, it met inside of a church,
Yeah, right.
which is just mind-blowing to me.
And there are Buddhist clubs as well.
Oh.
Right. So,
And I know there's a Muslim club.
yeah.
Yeah.
But as time progressed, some of these people came to our club, and they became some of our best allies. They saw what was happening. They thought it was wonderful, and they're treasured friends to this day.
Sure.
And I just love that.
That's amazing. I think really what's fascinating or like really encouraging is that rather than just ignore kind of negative voices, which I think is something we often do, like, oh, that negativity, whatever, but instead facing it and discussing and talking to those voices and trying to show kind of where you're coming from and what you're doing. That's really inspiring.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's also very biblical, right? Because we are encouraged to be prepared to give a defense of the faith within, right? So,
Right.
so I think it's very biblical that, we are standing on that hill. And we are saying, this is who we are. If you have questions, come and ask us.
Yeah.
Right.
We have the grand diplomat here who will always,
Very grand diplomat.
the grand diplomat here who will always respond with gentleness and softness and love. And when people challenge us, you do a really good job of disarming them, of actually just engaging them to a point where they actually understand what we're doing. And I think that's been evident throughout. I mean, I think you've seen that too, Joe.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like through both your presidency and then just continuing on through the decade of our club, you're always very good at engaging people who
Sure.
would normally not even step foot in a church or
Sure.
get anywhere near anything that has Christian attached to it.
And I think that's the other thing, right? Is because to get people to go to church, even a Toastmasters club in a church would be quite difficult. But to get people to come to a Christian Toastmasters that's not inside a church, especially because we live in a predominantly Buddhist culture,
Right.
and whether that's like they're really religious or just pay lip service to us. But to get people into a church is really hard. But we can do it outside the church and still be a Christian environment.
Yeah.
Well, we have been in some churches.
We have.
That's
yes.
right.
We did have
Yeah.
one year. We did
That
have one
one
year.
year
Yeah.
we
did
were in
have
the
one year in
church.
Our first meeting, our what was it called? The showcase meeting
Sure.
was in church.
True.
And we had a
But
couple
I wasn't
meetings.
there.
Yeah, right.
Oh, there's the honorary part of the charter member. Well, we've talked about, I think, a specific challenge. For you personally, over this past decade, I mean, we just had our TGIF 10th birthday like 2 months ago.
And you couldn't come because you had your Achilles heel. Yeah.
That's right, that big old foot. So
Yeah,
you're in here with the boot. That's wrong.
Yeah.
But we've made that milestone. We've hit 10 years, which, yes, a decade is kind of arbitrary. But as humans, I think we look at that and we go, wow, we've really stood the test of time a bit. So in that time, like what's been a highlight for you, or some of the highlights in the past decade of seeing your thought go from thought to reality to something really big?
Okay. Well, from the very beginning, in our onset, we also set the goal that we would make perfect 10 DCP point, the Distinguished Presidents Club. And that is even harder because you need 9 points to qualify.
Right.
And that in itself is very hard, but to get 10 points, we call it the perfect 10. So we didn't just want to meet the minimum, we wanted to really push hard for excellence. And so every single year that both clubs, ever since their inception, have been able to do that, I think that is always a highlight. It never gets old because just the amount of teamwork that it takes,
Right.
the amount of good leadership it takes, it's always a joy to see that happen.
And also planning, right? Just like the planning of it.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. The second thing is some of our members who have received Christ in their hearts because in their journey with our meetings, we always start with a prayer. We acknowledge God, that he's in the meeting, he's the source of our love, and that every person is someone that God shines through in their individual way. It's like a stained glass when God's light comes through. There's a whole array of different varieties and we tell people that you are born to shine. You're reflecting God's light in your
The
individual way
keyword for
that
the other
nobody
club.
else can do.
Keyword
Right?
for the other club.
Right.
Yeah.
So, let's see, where were we? Okay, so in that, the highlights of seeing those that take prayer as a normal part, even the non-believers, they talk to God now.
Right.
You know? Every time we finish the meeting, we get into this huddle. This was started by Paul, which I just loved. From the time he did that, everybody joins arms, arm in arm.
Yeah.
We have this chant different chants for both clubs, and then we close with prayer. And you just that feeling of oneness, that feeling of having a good meeting and feeling uplifted and ending like that is always a highlight.
Right.
Right. And then also to see the homegrown growth of the different members.
Yeah.
Both of you,
That's true. Oh my.
these were the only clubs that you were in.
Yeah.
And you've both been presidents.
That's
Yes.
true.
You've been national champion speakers.
That's also happened.
And we have seen a whole array of members. I think Born to Shine and TGIF have an amazing record of the competitions in the national competition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it speaks for we pursue the excellence for the glory of God.
Right.
Not just for our own egos, but that there's a purpose. We want to be good. We want to do it in excellence because we want to give our best to God. And to see we've had 2 national Chinese speaking
Yeah.
champions.
I know, even
Yeah.
Chinese, yes.
Even Chinese,
And
yeah.
in Toastmasters, well, English as a foreigner, you always have a built-in advantage. And when we saw the Chinese level of speaking, I never ever dreamed we'd ever have a Chinese national champion.
I know.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And the first one to achieve that was Kevin, who came as he was a college student.
Yes.
Right.
Had been president, and I think it was his 4th year in Toastmasters that he
with Born to
achieved the
Shine.
Chinese national champion.
Crazy.
How good is that?
And,
right?
and Lila,
And
I think
Lila.
it was like her first or second year.
It was her first year.
It was the
first
first year,
year.
right? And she was the
and
national
she
champion.
won
yeah.
the national
Crazy.
champion.
Yeah.
Right? And also in evaluation, we have just so many national champion evaluators.
Right.
And that helps the club grow, that people that give excellent feedback time after time, that's just help the nurturing of the quality in the club.
Amazing.
So I think that's a tremendous gift that God's given us through the people that he brought.
So, Lester, TGIF and also Born to Shine now are considered, we don't say it ourselves too often, but around Taiwan, District 67, they are known for being pretty successful clubs, and some people say probably 2 of the most successful clubs in Taiwan. What do you think is the foundation of that success?
Well, as we've said many times, that our foundation, building on God's love. Because when you come into a club and you can just sense the caring and the camaraderie, that when you have that element and you have to go above and beyond and you're pursuing your personal goals, but it's also tied, interweaving with the goals of the club as a whole,
Right.
that you get people that are very motivated. Because they say it's easy to quit something,
Yeah.
all right? But when you're a part of something, it's not easy to quit on a team, right? Because you're interlaced. When you're dragging through the dirt and nothing seems to be going well and you're discouraged, it's the team
Got everyone holding on to each other.
that keeps you going. It's also your commitment to God that keeps you going. So, number 1, the foundation of building on love.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2, I feel like when a person comes into a club, we really encourage them to, number 1, to attend regularly.
Yeah.
Sure.
You can't improve unless
Exactly
you're there.
right. Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to show up like once every 3 months. I'm
Right.
not
You're
going
not
to
going
see
to grow. You're
anything.
not going to grow. No.
And with the excellence that's there, I've seen time and time again that when you give yourself to it and you're really faithful to it, the momentum builds. All right.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
therefore, we like to encourage our members to get their first educational award within the first year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That means to do 10 speeches, and that gives you a little leeway for, not every month, but so if you're extra busy or something, that can be your off month. But to do the 10 speeches, and when you do that, your experience from your last speech is still fresh in your mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
You haven't totally forgotten it.
Sure.
Right? And
What
you
was that
still
evaluation?
And you still have a little bit of that feeling of what it is to be on
Sure.
stage. So the closer it is together, the faster that you improve, and that has been excellent.
Well, just for myself, just to interject there, like we have a new member, Chloe, in our club, and she's rather quiet. And then she did the table topic session a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
And I was just doing the videos for our YouTube channel, and I was just going through all her questions and the way she was doing it, and I was, wow.
That's right.
That was so well done. I didn't expect it. And when I was watching it, I was like, that is how a great table topic session is run. And that's the but she comes every week.
She sees it all the time.
And then I commented in the line group, I commented to her, hey, great job. And she said, no, she's just been coming and watching and observing.
Wow.
This is the idea of what you're talking about, like just that regular consistency, coming, watching.
Yeah.
And not being passive about it, but actually actively, what are they doing and what's making it good? And then she can deliver the excellence that we always strive for.
Right. She really sees that growth by actually showing up.
I mean, you were there for that tabletop.
Oh, I was amazing.
It was pretty good,
Yeah.
But, by the same token, there are some that don't improve quite as fast. But I think for those, they're in a very encouraging environment. And, like, people are encouraging to them. I think that I was told by one person that I used to work with, he said, it's easy to catch someone doing something wrong.
Sure.
Right.
But it's always great to catch someone doing right.
Yeah, there we go.
And I think we do that. That when we see something to compliment, just butter on the praise.
Come on.
Right?
Some of us
build them up.
Some of us better than others.
I think there's one person in this room that's particularly good at it.
Yeah, let's both look at him, Joe.
Yeah, ha.
There's also got to be tough loves.
That's right.
But
tough love this side.
You've got the tough love down. There we go.
But time after time, I've seen even the slower ones when all of a sudden you're sitting there listening to them, and you know that something is flipped on the switch.
Yeah.
Where they come out of themselves, and you go, wow, they've turned the corner.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Just beautiful. I love hearing kind of the encouragement and seeing people grow. Definitely. And the wonderful story about Chloe. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
So I think to kind of wrap up the interview for this episode, I kind of want to ask, we've hit 10 years.
Yeah.
All right. The next decade.
That's right, the next decade.
In 3 sentences. No, just kidding. I won't be.
Okay.
Yeah, kidding. 4 sentences.
We'll give you 4.
Well, as we've seen, the two clubs are very strong.
Right.
And it's quite stable. And I shared this at our 10th anniversary, that there was something very surprising to me during the period of COVID, where we could not have physical meetings, and we had to do them online. And mentally, it was just such a downer. We're not going to be there, and just the vibe in the room and all this. And yet,
my neighbors got scared.
I was so amazed when we started the Zoom meetings that somehow God was able to transcend that physical proximity.
Right.
And through Wi-Fi and through the World Wide Web, we could still experience that love and the camaraderie. And this, in addition to our church, what we experienced.
Right.
That when we went online, I mean, we streamed from the very beginning, but during COVID, the number of people that attended just sort of spiked incredibly and from all over the place. And this is a dream that I have for TGIF and Born to Shine, that we can start implementing this hybrid leg of also streaming our meetings and then work on trying to attract people online to the YouTube channel that Paul has put so much effort into and so much quality. So hopefully that there'd be more and more people that would start watching on a regular basis.
Yeah.
When I'm in the summertime, when I'm in Anacortes, Washington, there's a Toastmasters Club. We're a brother-sister club. And 4 of the members got up at 4:30 in the morning to attend our online meeting.
Oh, my goodness.
And they were blown away. They loved it. And when we stopped this summer there, they said, please, if you start doing them online again or broadcasting, we want to attend.
Yeah, I know when we streamed a few times when you were stuck in your apartment
Right.
with that big old boot.
Yeah.
And I remember not only did my mom watch, your mom watched.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. And I tell you, the lift to me personally, not being able to come, I was really feeling down, especially at the 10th anniversary.
Yes.
No, that must be tough for you.
What
That
it
must be
did
tough,
for me, it was just amazing.
Yeah.
So as more people start attending, that with the strength of the club, we can also start having some members mentor an online presence. And maybe in between, we could have some people that could actually give a speech online.
Right.
Or do something, we'll have to feel our way through that.
Yeah, I think that's a learning
Yeah.
process, but that's a beautiful vision for the future.
But
It is, yeah.
to take that seed and to give it some wings outside of our physical proximity and see what God can do with it.
Right.
And as we sow that seed, we'll pray to God that you'll make it fruitful and that you'll bring out 100-fold from that. So
Beautiful.
yeah, that's what I hope for in the next 10
Yeah,
years.
that's been great, Lester. I know that we're almost finished,
Yeah.
but I just thought of something else because we've been very club focused and group focused, and the challenges, the highlights, etc. But personally, how have you grown in TGIF and Born to Shine Christian
the
Toastmasters?
question.
How have you grown?
I think number one is a measure of confidence, because a lot of times, we have to move venues, and it seems like such a big ordeal,
Right.
and yet every time something appears and works out, and that's been a blessing. I've loved
True.
every venue we've been in.
Yeah.
And this was at our very foundation where initially the church I went to opened their doors to meet in the church, and then they sort of got very nervous about the nonprofit status, which the government looks very closely, and since you have to pay dues going to Toastmaster, they said, we can't do this, and you need to find another venue. And we met in my office.
Yes.
The small office, and as many as 70, I think the max
Yeah,
was
I remember
74
seeing-
people
That was
that
amazing.
came, and I think that time where there's nothing glorious about our surroundings and we were packed together, it still did something very special in us,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's the confidence that God will provide, God will make a way when we've had some troubles. God brings us through it, and that level of trust in God being on your side.
Yeah.
It's I think been really changed my viewpoint in a lot of areas in life. Yeah.
That's such a good point. It's not even just venues. Oftentimes I feel like there's a confidence boost when it comes to our presidents. Because
that's
it's always
right.
who's going to be the next
Yeah,
president?
exactly.
God, who are you going to provide? Is this it?
I know.
And then, someone
And
said,
sometimes very late in the day.
very late.
And specifically, I think there was an inflection point where we had the mindset that we always wanted the president to be a strong Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had many good candidates of extremely great leaders and good speakers. And one year we came to a point to where none of those candidates they just had things going on in their life or something that they could step forward and be the president that year.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our young members, Alice,
Yeah.
she stepped forward. She says, I can volunteer to be president.
Right.
And, we didn't have a lot of time. It's like getting down to the wire. And we prayed about it and said, okay, let's go with it.
Let's go.
I tell you, I remember the meeting before she was going to be taking over. It was still the previous president. And all of a sudden, she came to me in a panic at the end of the meeting. She goes, Lester, I just realized something. The president always closes in prayer. I don't know how to pray. I said, well, that's okay. There's some of us, we can help you do that. She goes, no, I want to pray.
I want to pray.
Wow.
And she's not a believer. And here, being in with our club,
Right.
and week after week, when we pray to God, and when we open with prayer and we close with prayer, now it's a natural part of her life.
Wow. Yeah.
And she feels like, yes, I want to do it. I thought, well, why don't you come to church with us and you can see a little more of prayer and all this. And she did. But that first prayer that she did that night, I told her, prayer's like talking to God. And just what would you say to him? And she had it written out. And And what I loved about it was, being a Christian, a lot of times there's this in lingo that's proper. It's
right.
almost like, the like being politically correct.
In prayer language.
In prayer language, right? And what she prayed was so simple and pure and not the religious language and all this. And I just was so touched, I think it was beautiful. And we've seen time after time also that God said, why does it have to be a Christian to be a leader? I can work through them too.
Right.
And time and time we've seen that.
Yeah.
And the people that are not Christians, yet they're totally committed in heart with the club. They've been flowing with us. And they, I believe they know God a lot better than you might think they do. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's another one of the jewels that has come out.
Yeah.
That
Well,
really
Lester,
blesses
yeah.
me.
This has just been, amazing to be
It
able to
has
get.
been, right? Yeah, no, I mean, so Lester, it's incredible to go back and just revisit some of those memories that I share with you, right?
Right.
That
we've all shared,
Right.
I mean, because I think I joined in 2014. I was at the charter ceremony, which is in October 2013. But you had been running the club from way back when. I think somewhere in 2012 you had started the club.
Yeah, the end of 2012.
Yeah, and then you were going till like October where you started. So it's really just a wonderful walk through memory lane to the foundations of the club.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think just being able to also convey that to some of the younger members that don't know the early stories is very powerful.
Yeah.
And to hear, and also Paul just adding, how have you personally grown?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So,
so thanks so much for coming,
thank
Lester,
you,
and for joining us today. This is going to just benefit a lot of people, I believe, not just in our clubs and our communities, but I think there'll be a much broader base just to understand where we came from and what we do. And hopefully, if anybody is listening or watching to the video, hopefully you can take some of these ideas and just put them into your clubs and just see how they run.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, this is the end of our episode.
Yeah.
And Lester, thank you for joining us.
Thank
and
you.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, those of you watching, if you are interested in seeing more of TGIF and Born to Shine, may I point you to a delightful YouTube channel managed by our own Paul Sharp.
Indeed, it's called TGIF and Born to Shine.
And also, we always welcome you to come to our meetings,
Yes.
which is the address.
Yeah, we'll get the address out there.
We'll put the address out there. We can't remember it, but we know it's on
Shini on,
do I remember where?
It's called MRT.
It's called SW6.
SW6.
Yeah.
And so really...
Next to McDonald's.
Next to
There's
McDonald's.
yeah.
And
There's a gym underneath.
We encourage you, if you want to check out those videos and see what the club looks like, check it out. Come visit us at some point.
Check out our Facebook pages.
Facebook page. You can find us all over. And we meet basically every Friday night, either TGIF or Born to Shine. So come and see us, and you will see us hopefully through this podcast. With our next episode, we'll be talking about...
The spread, right?
The spread.
The spread, and the spread is like how... Sorry, the spread, right?
The growth.
The growth. Sorry, the growth. So the growth will be looking at, where did Born to Shine Christian Toastmasters come from?
That's right.
Because we founded TGIF Christian Toastmasters, and a few years later... we popped out a little baby, and that little baby was called Born to Shine. Yeah.
And so please keep your eyes out for that next episode. We'll be having a couple of other different guests.
Yeah.
Lester, you'll have to watch. But
Okay.
Thanks so much.
We love you so much, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And thank you, all of you, for joining us
Yeah.
for our very first official episode of The Story.
The Story.
TGIF and Born to Shine,
Christian
Toastmasters.
Toastmasters.
All right, goodbye.
Cheers.